Welcome to Vitalify Unplugged. You're listening to your hosts, Gry and Steph.
In this podcast, we talk about everything health and well-being, science and technology, and ancient wisdom.
This is for the quirky humans navigating the messy middle, looking for the path to true vitality.
It's for the curious minds and tired bodies looking for clarity, energy, and inspiration that works your way.
Welcome back to Vitalify Unplugged.
Hey, it's your friend Gry, intuitive AI and tech whisperer, 60 plus full throttle and talk energy bunny, fun, fairness, and freedom.
And I'm Steph, holistic nurse, soulful scriber, magnetic mama, dancing through midlife with truth, magic, and messy, wild-hearted freedom. So welcome back to season 2. And in this season, it feels a little different for us because we are going to explore something that I think a lot of people think and feel and talk about, but we're going to bring it in from the Vitalify perspective with the quirky midlife human view. And we will be exploring what actually makes life feel wealthy. So what is wealth? And not just like success on papers, but what is the richness of living?
Kind of argue that not a lot of people talk about wealth so much. It's kind of something, at least in my culture, that we don't really talk about that much. But many of us grew up with a very clear definition of what wealth actually was. At least I did. And it usually meant money, status, achievement, title, security. I think that was a huge, this sounds a bit odd to say. I think that was a huge one for my parents, but then they packed us all up and went to Africa for 2 years. So I'm not quite sure it's quite right. But success was always something that you could measure and display somehow. But then something interesting starts happening in your sort of late is into your 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, and
I definitely think, since turning 40, my understanding and perceptions around what a rich and full life looks like. And I think people who potentially, and I definitely put myself into this category, who have done socially the right things like, you know, got married, had kids, bought a house, you know, did the things, but then still ask questions around why don't I, even though I've achieved all the things in my life, why don't I necessarily feel like the way I thought I would? And, you know, definitely been through the burnout route to look successful. And, you know, just exploring those kind of questions a bit more deeply as I hit 40. And I think this is the space that 40 and, well, for me, 40, right? Like that's sort of when it really kind of smacked me in the face. And so I think what's going to be interesting about this season is that we're going to look deeper at what wealth feels like, but it may not be what you said, the previous definition of what wealth was.
I think it's kind of like the idea of wealth beyond money that we're really trying to look at what it actually means. I just thought I'd share like a segue, as I usually do, because based on you know, my upbringing and everything, what I did was I went and I got an education where I got paid really good money. But that was also exciting. That was also underpinning everything in technology. I earned great money. And then in my 50s, I decided to be a startup queen and to start my new businesses and things. And guess what? Running your own business, it's not that easy. And money doesn't come automatically into your account. So I had like a rude awakening, probably. I was still contracting in those days and getting good money. And then I kind of had that rude awakening about the money side of wealth. But for me, it became really important to do things that I love to do. So having the wealth of freedom, if you like, and do things that were meaningful. So that was kind of what was driving me in my 50s and now into my 60s as well. But it's not a personal thing. We're not just looking at it from our personal perspective. I thought I would just bring that in because you were talking about the 40s, but I'm obviously a late starter, maybe because I didn't have children. Like, hey, the world is my oyster and all the children in the world are mine. But it's just not, it's not just a personal feeling. It's really when you look at psychology and well-being research, it shows
Mm,
something similar. And once our basic needs are met, the things that shape well-being are often invisible. We don't really see them. So connection, meaning, energy, time, belonging. And I didn't
yeah.
really mention that before, but what I kind of specialize in now in relation to tech is really unleashing potential and seeing inclusion as a catalyst for innovation and impact in the age of AI. So it fits in really well with me. I've always talked about belonging. I've always talked about celebrating differences, but those are not the things that we're usually seen as wealth. So back to personal. Over to you,
Yeah.
Steph. Sorry, I
Yeah.
went on a
Well,
rant.
no, and I think that's really important to acknowledge because uh, I think if I think about my life and as a young person and what I thought of wealth, interestingly, I never wanted to work in something that I didn't enjoy.
Mm,
So, a key determinant to my wealth was doing things that I loved. And
mm,
sometimes that meant that I would do things that I love without money. But I believe that
mm,
in doing those things, it has led and opened doors that created wealth financially as well as enriched my
mm,
life in experiences, in
mm.
wisdom, in knowledge, in being able to hold spaces unapologetically and
Yeah.
non-judgmentally. And by having that wealth, in
Mm,
my view, that was my view as a young person. So I've
yeah.
kind of tried to live in
Mm.
that way. So this is why I'm really excited to get into this season and really ask different people the same questions and based on their lived experiences, their professional experiences
Yeah.
and educational experiences, what have you,
Mm,
to broaden, hopefully for everyone listening, and to broaden the horizons of this very narrow
mm,
definition that I think we were fed
mm, mm.
as a
Yep.
society. And
Yep.
we won't go into politics or conspiracy theories, but
Oh.
right. So I think this season comes at a very potent
Mm,
time, and I do think wealth is an ecosystem, and I would really love for this season to explore what that looks like.
mm,
And just when one part thrives, as I was saying before in my life, even though I might have
mm,
done things without any money, it opened doors and opportunities to benefit others. So
mm,
I do believe it's a bit of an ecosystem. So I'm
mm,
really excited to explore what other people think and feel and see and experience and
mm.
understand wealth to be from their perspective.
Yeah, I guess building an ecosystem or the whole concept of wealth ecology, if you like, is something
Yeah.
that resonated really well with us. And because human well being works in a very, very similar way. So, for example, if we have more energy, we can build better relationships, at least if we are willing to listen, right? And
Yeah.
stronger relationships means that we have more resilience. And I was just sharing some um, I've just had a young person staying with me for a while here, and there is a difference in the resilience younger people today have. But there's a reason for that because they've lived very different lives to us. So they have a very different perspective of wealth, some of which we can learn from as well. It's not just about money,
100%.
it's about
Mm.
relationships.
Yeah.
And so more meaning means greater well-being, and financial stability means less stress. And I do want to just elaborate a little bit on that. Having that education where I actually got paid good money meant that I was able to do those things that was altruistic outside of that. It's just that when my 50s and specifically my 60s, I'm going, I just want to be doing that stuff and I'm going to be actually building my wealth based on that and not having to do a job that I don't really want to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we can look at those because we've kind of defined a number of elements that we want to go through in this wealth ecosystems, but we're not going to go too deep yet, but let's unpack them. Do you want to start with inner wealth?
Yeah. So what I've found a bit exciting, and I have, well-being is a big passion of mine because I have learnt through some studies in psychology and working in health in over 20 years and observing people, and then my own personal experiences watching my kids and moving between communities. I've really built up this deeper understanding of wealth and well-being. Funnily enough, when I was doing some research, it lines up very similarly. It's very similar to these pillars that we've created, which I think is interesting, and I will be curious to see how that plays out through the season. But so what we kind of framed it as, and it's a loose framework because I think it's an evolving kind of system, but we've created 6 main pillars or elements in the ecosystem or the wealth ecology. I really like the concept of wealth ecology.
Yeah.
And that is looking at 6 main areas: inner wealth, vitality wealth, time wealth, and relational wealth, and meaning wealth, and financial wealth. So they're kind of the 6 areas that we'll break up into episodes and explore with different people who we value as people who demonstrate wealth in a broader sense of what we feel like society has been narrow-mindedly focusing on. So the 6 elements of wealth at the top, or I think it's more of a flower, like a circle, maybe a spirally type shape. Yeah.
Little
So
star.
inner wealth, I think, sits at the heart of everything because that is where self-awareness, your values, how you identify, and I believe if you're truly wealthy, you can freely be yourself unapologetically. And in having that freedom is invaluable, right? So, I mean, inner wealth for me is probably at the core.
Yeah, no, that makes absolutely sense. And then my favorite, vitality wealth, when I ask people of 3 words that they think of me, it's always around enthusiasm, energy, all those kind of things, which I kind of relate to vitality, if you like. So it's your energy, it's your capacity, your physical and mental well-being to a certain extent, your nervous system health and sleep, recovery, clarity, those kind of things that keep us healthy, wealthy, right? Or wealthy, healthy.
Yeah.
So, you can have success with money, but if you're exhausted, it's very hard to feel wealthy. Absolutely.
100%. And I think that leads into time wealth because time wealth, I think, is something probably, our age demographic would be facing on a day-to-day basis because it's a really busy time in your life. Like, yes, you're kind of mid-career or changing career, but on top of that, it's stepping out and or changing. But on top of that, for people with kids, their kids might be in their whatever age that is of itself a time consumption product. But then also people have like aging parents or aging family or looking after family with disabilities. So this on top of trying to maintain a household, trying to earn money or survive or thrive, whatever. So time wealth is something that I think is going to be very fascinating to explore and unpack a bit more.
And I just want to put a little extra spin on that because in the age of technology and AI, this becomes even more important because things are flying at us at a supersonic speed, or if that's the right word for that, right? So there's things coming at you all the time and you go, whoa, whoa, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, right? So you get that acceleration, amplification of not necessarily just the good things. So we need to be even more aware of time.
Yeah, and exactly the autonomy of your time, and then having the space to be able to pause, reflect, connect. I think definitely having moved from a kind of rural, remote area to a city, like
Yeah.
people's time frames are really different. Like it's
Yeah.
people in the city are busy, whereas in rural, remote Australia, you might be busy, but there's time. So you don't have traffic, you don't have stoplights, you don't have lineups, you don't have so it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
different
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
many people today could be financially stable, but
Yeah.
essentially time poor.
Yeah.
So I think
Absolutely.
that's a
And you were
fascinating.
talking about the connection that we have as well, which brings us on to relational wealth, right? So
Mm,
we're absolutely wired for connection. And relationships strongly influence well being and longevity. So, if you're not connected with your family or with your community or with anybody, it can have an impact on mental health, things like Alzheimer's, dementia, all those kind of things as well. So that relational wealth, same thing is really important, but it includes friendships and it includes communities. So important, even just saying hi to your neighbor, right? Being in
mm,
supportive partnerships, whether that is at work or at home or whatever, and then being seen and understood and I guess that's kind of something that's really deeply resonates with me because I kind of always felt like an alien, and that's why I wrote my book, to give people a companion to figure out how they can be seen and understood for who they are. But, a wealthy life often includes people who help you feel like you belong. So it's very much about belong. The relational health is very much about belonging. And then I guess that kind of moves into meaning, doesn't it?
yeah. And what is your purpose in life and
Mhm.
understanding what you're here to do? Because really, we're here for a short time in the scheme of the universe. And so, like in this lifetime, to maximize time on earth and really embodying whatever that is can contribute to the wealth of you being and therefore your interpretation of events, experiences, and what have you.
Mm,
So, knowing well, I think, and I'm pretty sure there's some research, and I would have to double check, but I'm pretty
mm,
sure that there is research to suggest that if you understand your purpose or you feel you understand your purpose, even if it's for a short term or you know what your life purpose is, in some way that contributes to making your life more meaningful and therefore healthier. And if we're using our definition, wealthier, right? So,
yeah.
giving back to the community, tapping into your intuition and creative sides,
Mm,
helping others and building something that solves a problem, which the
mm.
entrepreneurs are onto. And then midlife is this time where you sort
Yeah.
of shift from I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, done that. Like
Mm,
it's kind of a bit more about, okay, for me anyway, in particular, I felt like, I ticked all the boxes, and now what is the next part?
mm,
What's the next
mm,
chapter, and what's the purpose of that
mm,
chapter, and how can I make sure that I'm a good role model to my kids so that
mm.
they embody that in their life,
Yeah.
so their life is thriving and wealthy.
Yeah. So from achievement to meaning sort of thing, right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
But so rounding off the six aspects of it, I should probably say that I have a fractured wrist because I keep on doing this superpower arm. But let's bring it all back into the sixth element, which is financial wealth, because it is
Yeah.
important. Money
Yeah.
matters. Having enough money to do and live and give the things that you want to do and live and give
Yeah.
is really, really important. And I mean, I was just listening to the radio this morning about the Southwest here in WA. I know I'm going off on tangents here, but it's a very, very popular area for tourists, right? So everybody's renting out their houses through Airbnb and so short-term things. So there's an interview with a woman there who has a job, has a 10-year-old child, lives in a caravan, right?
Mm.
Because
Kind of.
the
Mm.
economies have changed and she is
Mm.
earning okay money, like what would have been perfectly okay, but with prices soaring and all that sort of stuff. So it is really important. And it is really important to start thinking about your financial wealth at an earlier stage, but looking at it from all the different aspects of your inner wealth, your relational wealth, your meaning wealth. And I can't remember them all now, but
You're
but
close.
it works. But what we're saying is that financial wealth works best when it supports the ecosystem rather than replacing it. So we need to have that fundamental, it's almost like a need on Maslow's right? To
Yeah.
have enough money to support yourself and your loved ones. But yeah. So that was us on our 6 pillars of wealth. Not woo woo, we're real. But
Yeah.
these are really important things, and this is what all the research says. So we dreamt this up without the research, and then we did the research. How cool is that?
Well, I feel like we found research to support our thinking,
Yeah, yeah,
which is real research, peer reviewed, PubMed,
yeah.
stuff. So,
We will also look for contrarian views to find out.
and,
We don't have to look very hard because we can find a lot of contrarian views in the world
right.
leadership today. But let's not go there.
And you're right. Like, I think that there is still a strong perception that if you have financial wealth, you are considered wealthy. I think that's a common, you can't, there's no arguing that, right? But I guess what we're
But it
hoping to bring to,
helps. Yeah,
yeah, 100%. And definitely financial wealth is, in my view, is important. And
absolutely.
I wish it was more accessible for more people.
Oh,
But I hope what we're bringing to the table is
mm,
something that we can ask listeners to reflect on
mm,
and really think of wealth in broader perspectives, as in where in your life do you already feel wealthy and where might there be spots that need extra attention. And by exploring that question, you can, rather than just being fixated on the financial perspective, like think about, what are your energy levels like? What's your time restraints or unrestraints? How are your relationships?
mm,
And do you feel connected to your purpose? So I
mm,
think it's really important to explore that
yeah,
definition of wealth beyond financial wealth,
mm,
which I'm not dismissing at all. And I don't want to be misunderstood. It is
mm,
important and it's necessary. But can we look at it from a broader perspective? And I think when we do, wealth will evolve and change potentially, or your perspective at least might
yeah,
evolve
yeah,
and change.
absolutely. I think I could take it back to what is it now? It must be 8 years ago. I was at this res- uh, entrepreneur summit type thing experience, and we were talking about wealth, and I felt so like through the bottom of the floor because I did not know where my next money was going to come from and things. And the mentor, very wise mentor, turned around and she said, well, to me, wealth is what you have left when you have no money left. It's your relationships, it's your health, it is your energy, it's all those things, your inner wealth and all that sort of stuff. So I thought that was a really good reminder to reassure us that it's not necessarily about getting everything perfect and to recognize that life goes through different seasons. And my partner and I'm older than him, but he still is looking towards retirement. I'm going, yeah, but I don't want to retire. I just want to have financial freedom.
Yeah.
So by
Yeah.
seasons, I don't necessarily mean age, right? And that there
Yeah.
are different forms of wealth and that they rise and they fall with where you are. So our goal really is simple for us all to get that awareness that wealth is
Mm.
more than just money and financial. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to this journey. Maybe we can tap a little bit into what we'll be exploring, Steph.
Yeah. So I know I said at the start, everyone talks about wealth and what have you, but I think when they're talking about wealth, they're not necessarily disclosing their own personal wealth, but it can be the observation of other people's wealth and what you don't have or what you do.
Mm,
Whereas I think what I'm hoping we can bring to this season is to really explore your own inner permission
mm,
around wealth and what that looks like for you, because
mm,
your values and experiences may be so wealthy and inspire someone else, yet you might not necessarily have an overflowing bank
mm,
account that demonstrates that. So but that still valuing that. So that inner permission, the vitality and the nervous system. The nervous system is a huge topic that
mm,
I've been playing with lately. And definitely, I think the wealth of regulating your nervous system to be able to make
mm,
decisions that enhance your life is kind of a vital component that's really opening up in the conversations, particularly on social media and online. So I think that's going to be a really interesting episode to explore. And the other ones that I'm excited about, because I think this is under-recognized, undervalued, and that is relationships and belonging. And I think people who work in any social, emotional worlds understand the importance of belonging and how that connection and feeling seen and heard can light up someone's world and move them from deathbed to, I mean, that's exaggerating, but, not always, but moving from a place of pain to transmuting that into creativity or something. So purpose and contribution, I think after 35, that becomes more of a focus than showing off and ego-filling stuff. And then obviously tapping into financial freedom, finding ways to get money to work for you as you age, because obviously as we age, our capacity changes and our energy changes and even our care factor changes, right? So how to keep generating financial wealth into your older age and the legacy that comes after that. So
older age.
Well, evolution of your human experience. We have a fabulous lineup.
We are super excited and a bit overwhelmed by the people that we have actually, reached out to and have agreed to come on board as guests on our podcast. I'm not going to mention any names yet. We will be announcing that closer to the different ones, because we're just, going, we could have that one there and that one there. We might even have more than one in each episode as well. So I think you'll be excited to hear these different perspectives, from health workers to coaches to financial advisors or educators and things. So, I'm super excited to have those conversations on your behalf. I think that's an okay thing to say, just to kind of tease it out. And we'll be reaching out and sort of inviting people to ask us questions in advance as well. So, we may even have a live one at some stage.
Pretty cool. That would be cool. And a panel with a live conversation. Let's see how clever we can get.
We can get very clever. But I guess as we wrap up, it's
maybe wealth isn't just what we accumulate.
No, maybe it's actually something we experience.
And I think for me that feels true. But I would love to hear from listeners, and I pose the question, how wealthy does your life actually feel right now? Share it in the comments. I don't know, in the place, on our socials, on our website, wherever.
Shall I answer that? Because it depends on what time of the day you ask me or which day you ask.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
What my last conversation was,
Yeah.
So, anyway, we would love to hear that. Share what your thoughts on wealth are, how wealthy does your life actually feel, and anything else that comes up for you in relation to wealth.
I do think wealth can be a triggering topic. So if this triggers you, good. I hope it helps.
In a nice way. In the
nicest way possible.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
I agree.
Thank
I think
you.
it's going to be an interesting season 2, and I look forward to sharing the next 10 episodes or whatever, however many we get to.
10, 11, 12.
Yeah, or whatever.
But
we're
fun.
Fluid and evolving.
We definitely are. And we do rely on you to keep us honest. So do let us know if we're going off on too many tangents.
I think I already know that answer, but anyway. Well, thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you in episode 1.
See ya. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Vitalify Unplugged. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend. Hit follow or subscribe. And don't forget, we love hearing from you. So send us a message and tell us what's lighting you up. See you in the next episode.